Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Lindsay Banks, and today we will take a closer look at limited liability companies, or LLCs. In today's presentation, we will answer basic questions surrounding LLCs. First, what is an LLC? Who can create and make up the business? What are the benefits? What documents are required to form the entity? How to legally run and operate the business, and finally, provide a real-world example of an LLC that you're probably familiar with, but may have not known that this gigantic company operates as an LLC. The limited liability company is a separate legal entity. It creates a shield of limited personal liability for its owners, offers flexibility in management, where members can decide whether they want to manage the business themselves or appoint managers. From a tax standpoint, LLCs benefit from pass-through taxation. LLCs also come with fewer formalities compared to corporations, making them easier and less costly to maintain. In short, the LLC combines the corporate-style protection of limited liability with the partnership-style flexibility of taxation, which is why it's such a popular choice for businesses of all sizes. Next, we look at who can create an LLC and who it takes to operate the business. An LLC is owned by its members, who can either manage the company themselves or delegate that responsibility to managers. Under the Uniform Limited Liability Company Act, LLCs have the same powers as individuals, meaning they can do anything necessary or convenient to carry on business. And finally, members' rights come from two sources: the state statutes that govern LLCs and the company's own operating agreement, which spells out how those rights are exercised in practice. Let's look at the benefits of LLCs. LLCs are popular because they're simple and flexible. The owners get the limited liability so that their personal assets are generally protected if the business faces debts or lawsuits. There aren't many rules on who can be an owner, which makes partnerships easy. They offer flexible ways to raise money, and profits usually pass straight through to your personal taxes, avoiding double taxation. Best of all, you have freedom in management. You don't need a formal board or officers unless you want them. Kind of like the cartoon/meme on the left says, "Hey man, it's just good business." Now, you may think that an LLC requires a ton of paperwork. However, to set up and run an LLC, there are really only three main documents that you must know and complete. The articles of organization are filed with the state. They officially create the LLC by listing the name, registered agent, and purpose. The statement of information, also filed online in many states, keeps the state updated on addresses, managers, and members, so the public record stays accurate. And finally, the operating agreement. While this document is not filed with the state, it is an internal contract among the members that lays out how the business is managed, how the profits are split, and how decisions are made. Together, these documents form the backbone of how the LLC operates and are usually found through the Secretary of State's website. Now we look at how to legally run and operate your LLC. We examine the formation and structure, governance and compliance, the financial and tax management, things to keep in mind, look at legal protections and risk management, and also dive a little bit into California-specific considerations. This is kind of your how to run a smart LLC without drowning in paperwork. First things first, pick the right state. This is usually where you actually do business. However, there are some workarounds that we'll explore in regards to our real-world LLC that show you how most large companies do it. You have to make sure that your LLC name is unique and has LLC in it. Grab a registered agent to handle the legal items and file your articles of organization. Inside your LLC, the operating agreement is the total lifesaver. It lays out who's in charge of what, how profits get split, and how decisions happen. Keeping clear records of the meetings, your finances, really everything, and make sure that you stay on top of annual reports and fees that may be required. Now, when we talk money, financial and tax management, you want to keep business and personal accounts separate, track every transaction, and pick the tax setup that fits best for you, whether it's a single member, partnership, etc. Now, as we look at legal protections and risk management, this is the fun part, as things are always changing. If you look at the picture of this cartoon, it illustrates essentially an LLC. A business owner plants a tiny tree labeled LLC, and every year it grows new branches like tax rules and compliance updates. The owner keeps watering it, adjusting the supports, trimming branches, basically keeping it healthy. That's what running an LLC is like. You have to pay attention, adjust so that your business grows strong. If you're in California, you have to remember things like franchise tax and reports, plus look into getting the right permits and insurance depending on your business. Follow these tips and your LLC will be solid, compliant, and ready for whatever comes next. Did you know that Chrysler is an LLC? I know I didn't before I started this project. Chrysler Group LLC is incorporated in Delaware, while its headquarters are in Auburn Hills, Michigan. It is part of Stellantis, which is a global automotive group, which also gives Chrysler international reach, and it manages brands like Jeep and Dodge. As an LLC, Chrysler gets liability protection across its subsidiaries, keeping personal and corporate obligations separate. Management is centralized in Michigan, where it helps keep strategies consistent across its operations and brands. So essentially, Chrysler blends the flexibility and protection of an LLC with the scale of a global automotive powerhouse. Chrysler is a good example of how many large companies structure themselves. As we said, the company is registered in Delaware, but has its headquarters in Michigan. Delaware is a popular choice for registration because of its corporate laws are highly developed, flexible, and business-friendly. Many Fortune 500 companies follow this same model, registering in Delaware for the legal benefits while keeping their headquarters in other states where their industries are strongest. Chrysler keeps its headquarters in Michigan because that's where its operations, workforce, and industry connections are. By doing this, Chrysler gets the legal and tax advantages of being a Delaware LLC while still running the day-to-day business where it makes the most sense. It's worth noting that during Chrysler's restructuring, the U.S. Treasury published an amended and restated operation agreement in 2009. This document is more than 250 pages. Normally, an LLC's operating agreement remains private and can be substantially shorter than 250 pages. But this became public because of the government's involvement, giving us rare insight into the internal governance of such a large LLC. To wrap up, let's quickly review what we covered. We started with what an LLC is, which is a separate legal entity. We looked at who makes up an LLC, focusing on members and how they manage or delegate. We highlighted the benefits, limited liability, flexible management, pass-through taxation, and fewer formalities. Next, we covered the required documents, the articles of organization, the statement of information, and the operating agreement. We also discussed how to run and operate an LLC, emphasizing the importance of compliance with state law and following the operating agreement. Finally, we looked at Chrysler as a real-world example, showing how these principles work in practice. Altogether, this gives us a clearer picture of how LLCs are structured, why they're popular, and how they function in the corporate world. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you learn to love LLCs.